When the water was at full boil, John Wade pushed himself up and went to the stove. He used a towel to pick up the iron tea kettle. Stupidly, he was smiling, but the smile was meaningless. He would not remember it. He would only remember the steam and the heat and the tension in his fists and forearms. "Kill Jesus," he said. Written in 1994, In the Lake of the Woods, by Tim O'Brien, is hailed as one of the most influential and puzzling mystery novels of all time. The book received the James Fenimore Cooper Prize for Best Historical Fiction 1 year after its publication in 1995. Tim O'Brien is an American author that writes historical fiction and mystery books based on his experiences in the Vietnam War. He is best known for his novel, The Things They Carried. Today, O'Brien writes and teaches full-time at Texas State University, San Marcos. In the Lake of the Woods has a strange and unique form of storytelling, in which reality and fiction is often blurred. The novel begins with an unnamed character informing the reader of his unreliability as a narrator, a key feature in the mystery that unfolds throughout the story. Often, the narration splits off into John Wade's numerous minor story arcs in his childhood. John's childhood is shown to be the source of his trauma and the beginning of his sorcerer personality. John's father was abusive and frequently engaged John in violent outbursts. Despite this, John admired his father. John often visited Kara's studio of magic, where he bought numerous magic items and tricks. John was devastated after his father's death and continued to use magic to take his focus off his trauma. Wade and Kathy, his future wife, met in college. Wade showed strange behavior when he stalked Kathy to satisfy a desire he had buried deep within himself. Eventually, Wade was drafted into the military and was sent off to Vietnam. There, he took on his sorcerer persona to distract himself from the horrors of war and to give himself some social security. After the war, John entered politics. He became lieutenant governor of Minnesota and later ran for the U.S. Senate. At one point, Wade forced Kathy to have an abortion, despite her wanting to have a baby, since John felt that her having a child would be an issue for his political career. John was discovered to have been involved in the MAIBe massacre and lost the election by a landslide vote. John and Kathy went on a vacation to a solitary cabin on a lake in Minnesota. The name of the location is Lake of the Woods. There is a small town a few miles away, but most of the events take place close to the cabin. The couple pretended to be happy, but continued to be haunted by the election's outcome. John temporarily lost his sanity and boiled several houseplants before descending into a fevered frenzy, in which the main question of the story arises. John woke up the next morning to find Kathy missing. John called her disappearance to the attention of his neighbors and the local police force, but continued to exhibit a disturbingly calm demeanor and did not wish to participate in the investigation himself. After 18 days, the search party was canceled. An investigation into John was started. Meanwhile, John borrowed a boat and a radio set from his neighbor, Claude. Claude was the last person to speak to John Wade before he disappeared into the mists of the lake, never to be seen again. Over the radio, John sounded disoriented and confused. Then, the radio went silent for the last time. The most impressive and interesting facet of the story is the ambiguous ending, and the fact that the resolution is left to the reader, who has been presented with evidence that points in numerous directions. In 1996, a made-for-television movie adaptation was released. John Wade is renamed to John Weiland, but no other notable differences are present, other than the considerably shorter amount of time the story is given to present itself. The adaptation was received much worse than the original book. This song, while not having a proper name, is an ambient track that carries the feeling of mystery. Its solemn atmosphere helps one imagine the mists rolling over the lake and John's boat disappearing into nothingness. John Wade's character carries the weight of the trauma experienced by many during the Vietnam War and the loss of sanity that many of these survivors underwent. His character resembles a bee, since they are usually docile until provoked or frightened. Upon this happening, they become uncontrollable and threatening, just as John did after he lost the election. Tim O'Brien's style is like a photograph taken without focus. The photo has enough focus to allow the viewer to understand that it has a basis in a real situation or event. At the same time, the photo is blurred to force the viewer to make assumptions and come to their own conclusions. This is quite evident in this particular novel. The question of Kathy Wade's disappearance is left unanswered, and yet the answer lies just a short distance ahead of the reader, veiled behind a thin layer of mist. The evidence is given to the reader in pieces, and the reader is expected to build their own picture. There are many theories on what happened to Kathy Wade, but her true fate is still a debated subject among fans today. Some theorize that Kathy and John planned to start over after the outcome of the election. Others believe she was murdered by John when he boiled several plants. The only thing the readers are sure of is that Tim O'Brien is the only man that knows the full story.